I'm writing this from the attendant booth. What's a tiny plexiglass box that smells faintly of cherry air freshener and industrial-grade soap. The main lights of the car wash are buzzing overhead, casting a sterile, white glare over the wet concrete, making the puddles look like pools of mercury. It's 3:47 a.m. There hasn't been a car in over an hour. Usually, I'd be grateful for the quiet. Right now, the silence is so loud it's making my teeth ache. Across the 4-lane street, parked just beyond the reach of the nearest streetlight, is a truck. It's an old thing, the kind you see rotting in a farmer's field, with a rounded cab and fenders that curve like tired shoulders. It's not running, the lights are off, but I know it's there, and I know it's waiting. I took this job 3 weeks ago out of sheer, unadulterated desperation. You know the story. Rent's due, savings account is a joke. And my resume is about as impressive as a blank sheet of paper. The ad said, night attendant, 24/7 automated car wash. No experience necessary. It sounded perfect. Easy money. No customers to deal with, except to press a button and take their cash or card through a little sliding drawer. I'd just sit here, listen to podcasts, and watch the world go by one sudsy vehicle at a time. My boss is an old man who seems permanently stooped, as if he spent a lifetime looking for something he dropped on the floor. His hands are gnarled and stained with chemicals, and he's got a weird wheezing laugh that sounds like a deflating balloon. On my first day, he walked me through the place, pointing out the emergency shutoffs and the vats of brightly colored chemicals that smelled sharp enough to make your eyes water. It's a simple job, he'd said, his voice a gravelly rumble. The machines do all the work. You're just here to make sure nobody does anything stupid and to keep the place tidy. Then he'd handed me a laminated sheet of paper. It was smudged and the corners were peeling, like it had been passed down for years. The rules, he'd said, his face unnervingly serious for a moment. You follow these, no exceptions. I took the sheet. It was short, typed out in a faded font. Night shift protocols, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The main bay lights must remain on at all times, regardless of customer traffic. The cost of electricity is less than the alternative. Do not, under any circumstances, alter the preset chemical mixtures. The ratios are precise for a reason. After midnight, the attendant booth door is to be locked at all times. Do not open it for anyone, for any reason. Use the transaction drawer only. Conduct a full cleaning of the booth and your person before the start of every shift. A clean workspace is a safe workspace. Be meticulous. I'd read them over, nodding. They seemed straightforward enough, if a little overly cautious. Standard corporate liability stuff, I figured, but it was the way he'd explained the last rule that stuck with me. He'd tapped the 4th rule with a grimy fingernail. This one, he'd said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. This one's the most important. Keep yourself, your uniform, your little box here, spotless. I mean it. Not a speck of grease, not a smudge of dirt. He'd leaned in a little, a weird forced grin on his face. The brushes in that tunnel, they spin fast. He'd let out that wheezing laugh, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. I didn't get the joke. How would a smudge of dirt on my uniform, inside a locked booth, lead to me losing a hand to brushes 50 feet away? It made no sense. But he was my boss, and I needed the job. So I just nodded and forced a smile. Got it. For the first couple of weeks, the job was exactly what I'd expected. Mind-numbingly boring. The nights were a slow parade of taxi drivers getting their cabs cleaned for the morning rush. Teenagers in beat-up Hondas coming through after a late movie, and the occasional long-haul trucker looking to wash off a few states' worth of road grime. I'd sit in my little glass box, the whir and spray of the car wash a constant, rhythmic background noise. I developed a routine. I'd arrive 15 minutes early, wipe down every surface in the booth with disinfectant wipes, check my uniform for any spots, and even scrub the soles of my boots on the bristly welcome mat until they were clean. It felt stupid, but the old man's weird joke had burrowed into my brain. It was an easy rule to follow, so I followed it. The hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. are the worst. The world goes quiet. The traffic on the main road dwindles to nothing. The only sounds are the hum of the fluorescent lights and the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water somewhere in the tunnel. It's a lonely, liminal space. You feel like you're the only person awake in the entire world. It's easy to let your mind drift. Sometimes I'd stare into the dark, empty tunnel with its giant, inert brushes looking like slumbering, hairy beasts, and a shiver would run down my spine for no reason at all. Then last night happened. It started like any other shift. The 1 a.m. rush of post-bar close cars came and went. By 2:30, it was dead. I was halfway through a true crime podcast, sipping a lukewarm energy drink, when I saw the headlights. They were faint, yellow, and low to the ground, not the bright white LEDs of a modern car. They moved slowly, deliberately, pulling off the main road and into the car wash entrance lane. It was a truck, an ancient one, a step-side pickup, maybe from the 50s or 60s, the kind of thing you see in a museum. But this one wasn't pristine. It was caked from bumper to bumper in a thick, wet layer of dark, reddish-brown mud. Not just dirty from a drive down a country road. It looked like it had been dredged from the bottom of a river. The mud was so thick it obscured the color of the paint, the chrome trim, even the license plate. It filled the wheel wells and clung to the undercarriage in great, heavy clumps. It rolled to a stop at the payment kiosk with an unnatural smoothness. There was no engine sound, no rumble of a V8, no diesel chug. Just the soft crunch of its tires on the gravelly asphalt. I squinted, trying to see the driver through the mud-streaked windshield. There was no one. The driver's seat was empty. My first thought was that it was a prank. Some kids with a remote-controlled project car. Or maybe the driver was slumped down below the window. I leaned towards the microphone. "Welcome to the Night Owl Car Wash," I said, my voice sounding tinny and loud in the silence. No response. The truck just sat there, silent and still. I waited a full minute. "Hello?" Nothing. A weird feeling started to crawl up my neck. I should have called my boss. I should have just sat there and waited for it to leave. But I'm a creature of habit, and my job is to get cars through the wash. A payment screen on my console lit up. A credit card had been inserted into the outdoor slot. A virtual card, the kind you use with your phone. The payment for the deluxe works. Wash, our most expensive option, was approved. My hand hovered over the Activate Wash button. Every instinct screamed at me not to press it. This was wrong. The empty seat, the silent engine, the sheer impossible amount of mud. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. But the payment was approved. The green light was blinking. My job is to press the button. So I pressed it. The truck rolled forward, its pace steady and unnervingly precise. Disappearing into the dark mouth of the tunnel, I stood up, my face pressed against the plexiglass, trying to see what was happening. The first set of sprayers kicked on with a loud hiss, dousing the truck in pre-soak foam. Then the high-pressure jets started, blasting the sides of the vehicle. That's when it started. Chunks of mud began to slough off the truck's sides, hitting the concrete floor with wet, heavy splats. But it wasn't just mud. As the water carved away the thick crust, something else was revealed. Underneath the mud, the truck's body wasn't made of metal. It was something dark, porous, and almost organic-looking, like petrified wood or blackened bone. And then, from the thickest layer of mud on the truck's flatbed, something moved. It was a slow, deliberate unfolding. A long, thin appendage, no thicker than my arm, rose from the muck. It was the same color as the mud, but it had a texture, a structure. It looked like it was made of millions of tightly packed bristles, like the head of some gargantuan industrial brush. It wavered in the air for a moment before another one, and then another, rose from the mud to join it. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen, my fingers gripping the edge of the console. There were 5 of them now. 5 long, bristle-limbed appendages swaying gently in the chaos of the water jets. They looked like tentacles. The truck continued its slow, automated crawl through the tunnel. As it reached the first set of giant, spinning scrubber brushes, the appendages went to work. They didn't attack the machines. They didn't flail wildly. They moved with a horrifying, meticulous grace. One of the limbs reached out and braced itself against the wall of the tunnel. Then, with an audible, grating scrape, it began to drag its bristled surface across the corrugated metal. It was cleaning it, scraping away years of accumulated soap scum, mineral deposits, and grime. The sound was like nothing I've ever heard. It was the sound of 1,000 wire brushes on stone, a high-pitched, rasping shriek that vibrated through the plexiglass and into my bones. Another limb unfolded and reached down, scouring the concrete floor, pushing the filthy water towards the drainage grates with terrifying efficiency. A third and fourth limb meticulously cleaned the giant blue and red brushes themselves, their bristles moving against the spin, stripping them of built-up gunk until the plastic fibers were bright and new. The fifth limb seemed to be dedicated to the truck itself, methodically polishing the strange, bone-like chassis that was now almost completely free of mud. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, for the entire duration of the wash cycle. The thing, this creature that had worn the truck like a shell, cleaned the entire tunnel from front to back. It was systematic and exhaustive. The rasping, scraping sound was relentless, echoing in the enclosed space. It was the sound of something being stripped down to its most essential layer. When the final rinse cycle finished and the giant blowers at the exit kicked on with a roar, the appendages began to retract. They folded back into themselves, sinking back into the now clean, dark surface of the truck bed, disappearing completely. There was no mud left. The truck that emerged from the far end of the tunnel was clean, but it wasn't shiny. The surface didn't gleam. It was a flat, matte black, like obsidian or coal. It still had no driver, no license plate. It rolled out onto the street, made a silent, perfect three-point turn, and drove off into the night, vanishing as quietly as it had arrived. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, just staring into the empty, dripping tunnel. My breath was ragged, my hands shaking. I tried to process what I had just seen. A truck made of bone? A creature made of brushes? It was impossible. It had to be a hallucination, sleep deprivation, the energy drink. It had to be. After my heart rate returned to something resembling normal, I unlocked the booth door. My legs felt like lead. I had to see. I had to prove to myself that I was losing my mind. I stepped out into the damp night air. The first thing I noticed was the smell. The usual scent of chemical soap and wet asphalt was gone. Instead, the air smelled sterile, like a hospital operating room. A sharp, ozonic, unnervingly clean scent. I walked to the entrance of the tunnel and looked inside. My stomach dropped. It was immaculate. I mean supernaturally, impossibly clean. The corrugated metal walls, which had always been dull gray and streaked with scum, now gleamed under the fluorescent lights, reflecting them with perfect clarity. The concrete floor was a pale, uniform white, free of a single oil stain or dark spot. The giant multicolored brushes, usually matted and grimy, were fluffy and vibrant, looking like they had just been installed. Even the nozzles on the sprayers, which were always caked with hard water deposits, shone like polished chrome. There was no grime, no dirt, no residue, nothing. It was as if the entire structure had just been fabricated moments ago. I ran a hand along the wall. It was smooth and cool to the touch, with no film of dirt whatsoever. My mind reeled. The rasping sound, the scraping. It was scouring, resurfacing. I stumbled back to my booth, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night huddled in my chair, jumping at every shadow, every drip of water. I tried to tell myself there was a rational explanation. But none came. No customer came through for the rest of my shift. The world remained silent. When my boss arrived at 7 a.m. to relieve me, I almost broke down and told him everything. But how could I? I'd be fired on the spot, probably with a recommendation for a psychiatric evaluation. He stepped out of his car, looked towards the tunnel, and paused. He squinted, his brow furrowed. "Huh," he grunted. He shuffled past me into the booth without another word. I just nodded, grabbed my stuff, and practically ran to my car. I thought that would be the end of it. A freakish, unexplainable event that I would eventually convince myself was a dream. But the feeling of dread didn't go away. It lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. The next night, I was on edge, but things seemed normal. The cars came and went. The rhythm of the wash was a comforting, familiar sound. But I started noticing things. Small things. A woman in a minivan came through around midnight. She was a regular, a nurse on her way home from a late shift. She had a string of photos of her kids taped to the dashboard, held together with yellowing tape. I'd seen them a dozen times. Bright, colorful, happy school pictures. As she drove out of the tunnel, the light from the booth caught the photos. They looked different. The color was washed out. The kids' bright red and blue shirts were now muted, pale shades. The photos themselves looked faded and curled at the edges, like they'd been sitting in the sun for 20 years. The woman didn't seem to notice, just gave me a tired wave as she drove off. I told myself it was just the lighting, a trick of the angle. An hour later, a young guy in a modified Civic came in. He had a pair of fluffy, bright pink dice hanging from his rearview mirror. They were obnoxious, but they were his signature. I saw his car at least twice a week. When he came out of the wash, the dice were a pale, sickly salmon color. The white dots were yellowed, like old ivory. The string they hung from looked frayed and thin. My blood ran cold. I started watching every car, every customer, with a growing sense of panic. A construction worker's truck went through with a brand new bright yellow hard hat on the passenger seat. It came out a dull, faded mustard color, covered in what looked like years of scuffs and scratches. A teenage girl had a dashboard covered in colorful, glossy stickers. When she emerged, they were peeling, cracked and faded, as if they'd been baking in the desert sun for a decade. The old man's joke suddenly clicked into place in my head, and it wasn't funny anymore. He wasn't talking about the brushes. He was talking about the cleaning. If you have dirt on you, you become something that needs to be cleaned. And what happens when that thing cleans a living being? What part of you does it scrape away? A hand? An arm? Your memories? Your youth? The realization hit me with the force of a blow. I felt sick. I wanted to run, to quit, to never come back to this place. But I was frozen in a state of morbid, terrified curiosity. I had to get through the shift. The last car of the night was a young couple in a brand new SUV. It still had the temporary paper license plate in the back window. The girl had a small, vibrant green succulent in a little ceramic pot on her dashboard. It was a cute, trendy little decoration. I watched them go into the tunnel, my heart pounding a frantic, sick rhythm against my ribs. I held my breath as they came out the other side. The SUV was gleaming, spotless. The couple was laughing about something. Then the girl stopped. She leaned forward, her laughter dying on her lips. She poked at the little pot on her dash. From my booth, I could see it clearly. The succulent, once green and full of life, was now a shriveled, brown, and utterly dead husk. The soil was dry and cracked. The little plant had been scrubbed of its life. The girl looked confused, then sad. She picked up the pot, showed it to the guy driving, who just shrugged. They drove off, another victim of the world's most thorough car wash. I knew then that I couldn't work here anymore. I was done. I would wait until my boss came in the morning, make up some excuse, and just leave. I would never look back. The last hour of my shift was the longest of my life. I didn't listen to any podcasts. I just sat there, staring out at the empty street, my mind racing. The silence was back, heavier and more menacing than ever before. Every drip of water from the tunnel sounded like a footstep. At 3:47 a.m., I saw it. It wasn't the headlights this time. It was just a shape, detaching itself from the deeper darkness across the street. The old truck. It pulled up silently, parking in the shadows of a closed-down diner directly opposite me. Its engine was off. Its lights were out. It was just sitting there, motionless, watching. My breath hitched in my throat. My blood turned to ice water. It wasn't in the customer lane. It wasn't here for a wash. The tunnel was already pristine. The truck was clean. So why was it here? A cold wave of pure terror washed over me. I stood up, my eyes locked on the silent, dark shape of the truck. My gaze darted around the inside of my booth, a frantic, animal instinct taking over. Checked the locks, checked the windows. It was here for something. What was it here for? My eyes scanned my little plexiglass world, the clean console. The wiped-down counter, the spotless floor. I followed the old man's rule. I was meticulous. I was safe. My gaze fell upon my uniform, my standard-issue dark blue work shirt and pants. I scanned them desperately, looking for any stray grease, any dirt. They were clean. I'd checked them when I came on shift. But then I saw it. On the cuff of my left pant leg, just above my boot, was a small, almost invisible smudge. It was a dark, reddish-brown, the same color as the mud from the truck. I must have brushed against the tunnel entrance when I went to inspect it last night. A tiny, insignificant speck of filth. I stared at the smudge, my mind refusing to make the connection. But it was there, undeniable. A single point of impurity in an otherwise sterile environment. My head snapped up, my eyes finding the truck across the street again. It hadn't moved. It was still just waiting. Patient, silent. And I finally understood. The truck wasn't here for the car wash. The tunnel was clean. The brushes were clean. Everything was clean. Except me. It's 4:12 a.m. now. The truck is still there. I haven't taken my eyes off it. I know, with a certainty that chills me to the very marrow of my bones, what it's waiting for. I have a smudge of mud on my pants, and the cleaner is here to take care of it. I don't think it will stop at my pant leg. I think it will be meticulous.